everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Debt Collection 101 here on Our Bite You. We got a very, very special guest who pretty much everybody watching probably knows him and his company. We have Tim Collins, Chief Compliance Officer over at TrueAccord. Thanks so much, Tim, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Love the last one that we did together. Very excited that we got a chance to do another one. So
glad to have you back. So, and then we got our lovely co-host over here, Mike DeSimone with Our Bite. So
lovely, huh?
Thanks so much, Mike, for joining us.
Of course.
Rare
Glad
appearance
to be here.
Hey. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about, it's a new topic. Well, not a new topic, obviously, it's been talked about a lot, but something that people are extremely interested in nowadays, especially, and that's using email in debt collection, something that you all at TrueAccord know very, very well, I believe. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and get started on this. But Tim, for anyone who doesn't know you, and doesn't know about TrueAccord, can you give us a little bit of background, I guess, on yourself, TrueAccord, and kind of explain how you guys use email right now?
Yeah, perfect. And yeah, thanks again, guys. And this is great to be able to do this again. My name is Tim Collins. I've been in the industry for 27 years. Started off in actually debt collection, commercial debt collection law firm, and then just slowly worked my way through into the agency world, into the debt buyer world, and even to the creditor side. So it's coming up on 27 years, and the last 3 in September will have been with TrueAccord. And really excited to have had this opportunity at TrueAccord because they're taking collections and approach to collections in a different way. It's very consumer focused to start. It's one of the things. It's a digital first. So what I mean by that is 99.9% of our communication is done digitally. That's email, and that's what we're going to talk about in a little bit. They also have machine learning, which is very, very exciting. In 2013, we weren't hearing the hype that we are hearing today about machine learning and the direction, and there's some great companies out there that are now starting to implement it in our space. But really, the organization's been around for since 2013. We're growing exponentially. We are now in the sending of tens of millions of emails a month. Wow. So to put it in a scope perspective, it's tens of millions. So that's very exciting to see from where we started, even me coming on board 3 years ago, to where we are now, and the scalability that email can provide you. So it's very
tens of millions. That's a lot.
It is. You think about phone calls, right? That's what most people are used with phone calls. Now just think about the number of phone calls you're making. Now you're just doing that with emails. And that's the way to start to try to grasp it in your mind. It's like, how are we going to send that many emails? And then what do you do with those emails, and how do you communicate with those emails and have a conversation and provide rights? So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Definitely interesting. So as a form of email, as a form of outreach, is there any specific compliance requirements that you need to follow by?
Yes. Yeah. And it's obviously an ongoing flow, but I go back to the very basics, right? Go back to the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and it talks about communication, about a debt with the consumer through any medium, right? So obviously when they wrote it in 77, 79, in that time frame, it was really written with a forward looking. So they wrote stuff that they didn't want to see, postcards, very, very specific, but they didn't say, hey, we don't know what communication is coming. So we want to make sure that we leave it broad enough to be able to follow any of those other mediums that might be out there. Interestingly enough, you could technically say that email was invented in 1972, so the legislators must have thought about it in 77. Must have. That's why they put in any medium. I think that's a great argument, which falls flat on its face because it wasn't until the late 90s that Congress and the House eventually went with email. So there may be a breakdown with that argument somewhere, but let's go with it. I would look, if you go to what we're all looking at, it's coming out in October, and my prediction is it's a Friday in October, that we're going to see that new CFPB rule come out on debt collection. And in there, they talk specifically about using email and using SMS, interestingly enough, in an unlimited fashion, which creates this opportunity to say, okay, they're really trying to push for that digital environment. We hadn't had much case law. There was really 2 cases. One was called Lavallee versus Med1, which was an email case where Med1 had sent an email that was attached in a PDF, and you had all this authentication. It was a medical debt, so HIPAA applies, so it's a different rules. That was the main case up until a couple months ago when we had this case come out called Green versus TrueAccord Corp. TrueAccord does it differently. We send the validation notice right inside the email, and people can see that. And the judge came out and said, no, this is an acceptable means, and there's no e-sign requirements. But I think, Michael, to get to your point, there's been a lot of this concern around consent. How do I get consent to email? I always come back with, how do you get consent to call? And some people are like, well, you need consent to call on a TCPA case, but if you were to skip trace a phone number and, you called it manually on a rotary phone, then you could avoid the TCPA exposure. But you have to have consent first. And so it's really trying to think about consent the way you need to think about it. But keep in mind, there's e-sign consent and there's other consents that are in there. But consent to email in general is not any kind of way restricted by the FDCPA or what the proposed rule looks like it's going to be. So.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that rule. I'm sure, just to have clarity there. I'm sure you all are too. A lot of collection agencies are. So were you guys looking forward to getting that first lawsuit there with Green versus TrueAccord to kind of set case law, or I'm curious?
No, that's a great question. I mean, it was one of those, I look at lawsuits from a business side, right? And so we were waiting for a really good case, but we also knew that you could have a judge who could come out and misinterpret something, and then you're in a boatload of hurt. So we were trying to balance good facts, good defense attorney. We had some great defense attorney work, and then timing with the rule. Because if we were going to have any impact on the rule, we had to have a ruling that's positive before that. And when we got this ruling, we immediately shared it with the CFPB, with state regulators, to let them know, hey, here's how a judge ruled on this, and we think the judge got it very right. So. Yeah. So we were excited but very nervous because you never know with the judge or jury. So,
well, congrats on that. That's good. So talking about disclosures, you brought it up a little bit, but this one's an interesting one. And with emails, and every communication you need to have these disclosures. So, do you recommend including disclosures in every single email or just the initial email?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's really one of the reasons TrueAccord is so successful at what they do is because they're so consumer focused. But if you break down those communications, like initial email, you got to have their rights in there, the right to dispute, and all that other stuff that goes with that, right? Their validation rights, and then there's state disclosures. And in an email, you're not taking up real estate on a piece of paper that costs you money. You're just taking up, up above the fold and below the fold. Kind of with you, if you will. But there's certain disclosures I think you should always have. One, and the CFPB's come out with the option to opt out of email. Because this is not marketing email. It's not really covered by canned spam. So there's really but good customer service, good consumer focus will tell you if you want the emails to stop, you should be able to click a button and they stop, right? And then you can figure out that piece. And so the right to dispute should be in every email. Again, it's just a URL. And the judge in the Green case came out. He actually gave us some feedback that he thought it needed to be a bigger font. And so we were looking at, well, maybe that's a good direction to go in. So, and then it makes it easier because you really want to be able to have consumers self-serve. When you're sending tens of millions of emails, you want the consumers to self-serve as much as they possibly can. And if they can do a dispute, update an address, update a phone number, schedule a time for you to call them. I mean, that just from a workflow management perspective, it creates all these opportunities for you. I will say this, there's always this risk, right? We're going to get sued. There's litigation risk. It's a high risk factor in this space. And so I think in the past, we've always tried to done good by the consumer, and sometimes you get sued for it. But really, if you look, those consumers are probably disgruntled a little bit anyway, maybe because of the call frequency. So that was leading to some of that piece. So with email, less intrusive, they can easily just hit delete, that kind of stuff. Probably that risk drops dramatically. So, and when I think it just gets to that whole theme, when you communicate with people the way that they want to be communicated with, they're more likely to pay you, less likely to sue you. and more driven to self-serve and trusting you. So it's a great question.
Trust is the biggest. That's a huge thing there.
Yeah.
I think you guys have done a great job, like just having this, this brand that everyone knows and starting to learn. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, and we've really driven it by, if you look at Google ratings, I mean, I used to think about BBB ratings as an agency, and you wanted that A+ and all that other stuff. But, if you're a consumer who doesn't know anything about TrueAccord and you just got a call or an email from us, you're going to go Google it, right? And you're going to say, hey, 200 plus, 4.8 Google rating. What's that all about? And then content over and over again of who we are and what we do and how we're consumer focused. I mean, it's really about brand, and we've never had brand recognition. You guys do a great job with brand recognition. People know who you are. Everybody remembers the image right off the top of their head when they see you guys. It's that kind of thing has to happen in the whole industry now. It has to happen at that agency level, so the consumers will create that trust that just comes from that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think that's that's a huge thing that I would love to see more of in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hoping the more people start to do it.
It's coming. So
yeah.
I believe it. Be a trailblazer, right?
Yes. Well, it can be done. I mean, until somebody tries it, and TrueAccord's clearly done it, been very, very successful for it. Now others can follow in the way that they, feel most comfortable with and see that it's very, very successful. So it's like how you guys continue to iterate and pivot and try new things, and push it out there. This is how evolution works. What we did before is maybe working great now, but a year from now, 2 years from now, it might not be.
So I'm not going to lie, I have been waiting to ask you this question all day long. It's very important to me because I'm in sales and I like crafting, crazy emails. So, do you have any tips for assigning subject lines to emails?
Yes, and if you go back to where we started, the CFPB talks about it in their proposed rule. Their whole purpose is to get you to open that email, right? And so they've asked for maybe last four of the account number, because if you think about it, what would be ideal in the ideal world is that you would have a creditor who would send an email saying, hey, TrueAccord is now taking over your account. And so you could see this warm handoff. It builds that trust that we were talking about. And then TrueAccord, or whoever follows that kind of naming that you've seen before. Hey, your Bank of America account is past due, this form. So if we go back to the rule that the CFPB is proposing, they've definitely been thinking about it from that consumer's perspective. And they're saying, what's it going to take to get them to open it? And you want them to open it because opening an email is engagement, right, Mike? Which is what this is all about. If we can show engagement, then that means we've got willingness, and in the debt collection agency, that's willingness to pay potentially. They may not have the ability currently, but at least you've got that willingness. They're willing to engage with you. So I think that helps a lot. I think in the green case, you saw a little bit of focus there too. Judge looked at that and said, really, there needs to be something in that subject box. So the judge did a great job of looking kind of at the whole process, all the emails that the consumer opened and looked at, and would those be engaging or not. But I would say this, the great thing about digital is it's open for experimentation. So if the rule comes out and says you have to put the last four of the account in there, well, maybe you start with that in the subject, and then maybe you put it in the middle, or maybe you put it at the end, or, and do you say it specifically out? And you get to run that as an experimentation and just do A/B testing over and over again till you can find where those consumers are truly engaging with you. And that's what we have at TrueAccord. We're always updating content and adding, 3,000 plus emails right now. And we're always testing to make sure, because machine learning learns on data, right? That's the jet fuel of machine learning is data. And you need to keep feeding in these new points that it can continue to try. So experimentation, it's ripe for experimentation. But once they give us, hey, every email has to have this, and we don't have that direction yet, it's a great time but when we do, we should be able to be ready to go for it. So
that's awesome. You can change. I mean, you can experiment so quick too with it. It's not like you have to train your whole staff to do this. It's just like, just type in this little template here, and now the emails are going to change to this format. So, it's definitely really nice. So this is something that's obviously, a hot topic nowadays, just on phones in general, like spam labels and everything like that. And this has been going on forever with email. So I can imagine this is a challenge, but is there a way, or what are you doing to kind of, to prevent your emails going to spam? Because I mean, that whole trust thing, again, talking to that, like something in your spam, it's like, oh, I don't trust this now right away. So
Yes, it's a great question. And your analogy with phone, because my phone just rang, 3 or 4 minutes ago, and I looked over, and it always just says potential spam.
yeah,
So if it says potential spam, I mean, who answers that, right?
no one.
It's the same with consumers. Most consumers are not going to go into their spam folder. They might have in the old days, right? But today we're too busy. We've got all these other platforms to go on. So anything that goes into spam it's just lost. And the email service providers, ESPs, will look and see if enough stuff goes to spam, then maybe you should be blacklisted. And so then you don't even get to go to spam. So the big players, really have this down to a science, and the carriers are just applying the same technology as you guys have seen with phone calls, and it's really trying to break through that piece. It's now happening with SMS. If you just try to go out there and blast SMS, you're going to get blocked. You're going to look like a spammer. And so that's really, what we're going to see, which is, Alex, to your great point, what's been happening in email for a decade or two, because we don't see those, Viagra ads that everybody saw 10 years ago, right?
Yep.
Today, you just don't see that stuff. Your email box is pretty good. Some stuff still leaks through. That's always going to happen, but quickly it's adapted and off it goes. So I think one of the things that this industry has done, and I did this in past jobs too, is I just want to take my letter and I'm going to attach it to an email and I'm going to send it off, right? And that used to work because it didn't go into spam. Today, most of those ESPs are just dropping those right into spam. So if you put an attachment on there that's considered high risk, they just drop it right into spam. So anybody who might be out there just emailing that letter as a cost savings, right? Because that's really why we did it in this space, was a cost savings. It's not even going to do that. So you're not giving them their rights, so they're probably not going to engage. They don't even know that you're contacting them. So here you've missed out on this opportunity to really start to engage with the consumer because you've sent the first thing right into their spam folder. So it's really thinking about it differently from I'm trying to save costs by emailing a letter to I'm trying to engage with the consumer. And how do I do that? And PDFs don't do that anymore. So, but it is a science. It's a lot of work, and they change their algorithms all the time. So if you become very, very successful at it, get ready. Don't pat yourself on the back. They're going to change something as they continue. It's because spammers continue to change. So it's just that ongoing process. Yeah.
So you kind of touched on this next question a little bit, but do you think emails will ever eventually replace written communication as forms such as letters?
I probably would have said yes prior to COVID. But now I see the mail truck come and I'm just like, it's like a race. The whole family just wants to run down there and see what, junk mail that we've got in there because it gives us something to do outside of the house. In all seriousness though, I don't think there's going to be a need for it forever. There's always going to be a need for phone, right? It's going to happen. It's just, we saw that in COVID. We saw a huge increase in the number of phone calls being made to agencies because people wanted to understand and talk to another human being, and email's a great communication tool, but it doesn't necessarily provide the connection that you need and that you can get over a phone call or a video call, even more so you can see that person's interacting. So I don't see mail going away. I see it being part of a process. And those agencies that are thinking about it are saying, look, I've got my call strategy, which drives a level of engagement. I'm going to layer on top of that some email where it's appropriate. I'm not going to email everybody if I don't have to email everybody. I'm not going to call everybody if I don't have to call everybody. I'm going to have to mail some people because that's the only way they're going to respond. And, I'm going to have to text. And you just have that strategy. It's really become, I think you guys have been talking about, we've talked about Omnichannel for a long time. We're talking about an opti-channel now, the optimum channel, consumer preference, communication preference. All of those things are going to become a factor. I mean, there's no reason you can't communicate via WhatsApp or Messenger or Snapchat. There's no reason, because if that's the way the consumer is communicating and they give you consent in some of those, or you get their information and, whatever, I don't want to go too far down that path, but why not communicate that? But back to your question, we're always going to have these other channels I don't think it's going to go the telegraph way where we don't have that, but that was a very inefficient, very expensive way to communicate with people.
Yeah, but do you think that you could use letters as a form of gaining consent from the consumers? Like if you send out an email and then have a link at the bottom of it, say, hey, go to this website to tell us your form of preference, whether it be text, email, phone call. Is that a way to kind of gain consent through that way?
Yeah, and I think it's from not even just from a consent. I mean, just come back to engagement, right? So every opportunity you can get them to engage with you. So if it's on the letter, you should have a great URL. You should have a website that's dedicated to the consumer. If you go out to any agency out there, the first page is always, we're great collectors, which is not what somebody who wants to pay their debt wants to see, right? But in the upper right-hand corner, it says make a payment. And that's kind of what your options are. And we need to get away from that. We need to say, if I'm a consumer who's going to buy a product, which is pay off a debt, what do they need to see to feel comfortable and to build that trust? So every chance that you get, so put it in a voicemail message, your URL, do all those things that you can do to drive people there, then be able to capture your consent. Or, if they really want to do a phone call, right, have the scheduling there that says, what time do you want to be called? And they can just put it in there and it's in your regular office hours. And then you could tell them, hey, we're calling you on this phone number at this time. You follow up with a text, because I think Alex or somebody mentioned it earlier, you can't call somebody without texting them today, right? Otherwise it's rude. You just called me out of the blue. How rude is that? And so you could do all these things that would then just increase that level of engagement. So the more channels you can do it through, the better. That's like every phone call you should be leaving, hey, or go out to our website. And it shouldn't be something that's like 900 words, unless those are really easy words. And I would avoid just words that just talk about payment. It should be more than just payment. So.
Okay, and I like how you said the opti-channel approach, basically, and it's so true because, who knew humans are diverse and everyone likes something different, and it's just giving somebody their channel of choice to basically pay through is just such a good idea, and everyone's gonna have a different preference, and I think depending on like what you're paying, even it's gonna change the channel of choice, right? Like I might not feel comfortable paying my mortgage via text, but I'll feel comfortable paying my $50 phone bill. So it's just,
Right.
I think that's really, really a good way of looking at it.
Great.
But so it's a lot of emails are talking about, or a lot of collection agencies are talking about using emails, and they want to get started, or they've used them, and I think they do things like you mentioned, like attaching a PDF and just sending it out. But what advice would you give for agencies that are trying, and they're just kind of kicking their tires with email outreach, and I guess they don't know where to start?
Oh yeah, great question. I always look at it this way: what's the problem you're trying to solve? And to start there and get the requirements instead of going out to the market, because there's a solution for any problem you have that you know of, and then any problem you have that you don't know of. There's a solution out there. We live in a tech rich. You guys are one of those companies that can provide those solutions, right? And you just have to come out. You can find the right vendor for whatever you need. But if you're going to start out, it's like I would say first and foremost, you have to change your mindset. It can't just be for cost savings. It has to be about engagement, consumer engagement, and the understanding that some consumers are going to email you back, which a lot of agencies don't allow. They'll put in that this is a do not reply email. There's a missed opportunity to engage. So even if you don't respond to them, at least have them, and then you can figure out, okay, I think we can respond to this bucket of emails because it's safe and here's our status. It's very legal, is signed off on the language that we're going to be used. It's got the disclosures I think that Michael was talking about. All of those things can be done in that process, but it's like start off small and start to test it, but change your whole focus. Make sure that you're using it as a tool to communicate with, not just as a cost savings. Otherwise, it's going to be like anything else. You're going to get 10% out of it. You're not going to get the whole 100%, and the lift that you'll get it'll just come down to cost savings, and eventually it won't be worth it. One of the other things you have to really think about is something you want to build yourself, or this is something you want to buy. This would be like, I think you guys have probably seen some of this. Twilio's out there, great platform. A lot of people are going out there and saying, look, we could build our own dialer, right? But do you really want to do that? Is that really what your core business is? And so I would say, go focus on core business. If you've got dialer needs, go to you guys, right? Go out to the experts, figure out what exactly you need and are trying to accomplish, and find the vendor that's going to help you do that. IT departments like to build. Building is sexy, right? So buying, less so. Buying an implementation, buying an integration, less so. So we have to keep that piece in mind. So keep coming back to that when your folks say, hey, we can code for this. I took a JavaScript class this weekend, so I'm pretty sure I can code for this. That's when the warning bells should be going off, and you should say, okay, we're definitely not going to be doing this piece. I would say the other thing to do is to really be prepared for setbacks, right? You're going to have them. So you may start emailing out, you might start seeing some success, engagement. You have to have different metrics, how you're going to measure that: open rates, click-through rates, payments on websites, all that kind of stuff. And then you might say, all of a sudden you get blocked and all your emails don't go through. And so it's like, you're going to have to say, okay, what happened, and how do we get labeled as spam, and how do we fix this problem? And it can be, email is very, very delicate. So if you're going to start sending out emails, today you send out 100 if you're going to do it yourself. Tomorrow you send out 200. The next day you send out 4. So it's that exponential growth, but it's got to be slow. They call that warming up, the URL, right, and the domain that's going to come out of. So it doesn't just look like spam. Because in the old days, people would just set up URLs and send out 100,000 emails, and that's automatically flagged. And again, that comes back to that, that buy versus build perspective. But if I can, I'd like to maybe turn the tables on you guys just a little bit and throw a question out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously emails out there, text messaging is out there. You guys have seen a lot of stuff with the Trace Act and everything that's going on. I mean, how has that been impacting, agencies overall? And then, you take all of that, right, and you throw COVID on top of it. Now there's that element in there. So, I mean, what are you guys seeing? Can you talk a little bit about that? What we should be thinking about?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm gonna be summarizing a lot of what you said because you've covered a ton of this already. But one of the things you mentioned earlier, I guess it's what is the problem you're actually trying to solve? You said, and I think a lot of us fall victim to this shiny object syndrome, and when they see emails out there, oh, I have to use email. I have to use email. They don't really think why they're using email. They just think they have to use it because everybody else is using it. So I would say, first make sure that's, I think a lot of agencies are falling victim to that. That's what I guess we're seeing. A lot of people are like, oh, we want to text, we want to email, but well, why? They don't know. They just want to do it, because everybody else is doing it. So that's obviously like a huge thing that we're seeing with agencies nowadays. And I think a lot of, just educating people on that is something that anyone can help with. But another point that you made was just again, the opti-channel. I don't think like email is ever going to just take over and be, we only have one channel of communications forever. Like that's it. Like I don't think like everyone's like, oh, millennials text. We're just going to text now. Like, no, it's not. I don't at least agree with that. I think eventually having that opti-channel communication platform or whatever it is where you can reach out to different people on their channel of choice and let them pay through that channel of choice. I really think that's kind of where it's going. It's great to hear you say that because that kind of makes me feel like that's going in the right direction. You guys know what you're doing over there. So yeah, I guess that's where I believe it's going, and I think it's only going to have a positive impact on consumers. I mean, my own selfish personal experience when I'm paying a bill, like I don't want to, I just want to get it done with and do it quick, right? A lot of the times, so many consumers fall victim to like going in debt just because of oversights. It's okay. Let me just handle this and get it done. Everyone's busy. They have a lot going on. It's easy to forget to pay a bill. So giving someone like this super easy, convenient way that they can do it in 15 seconds, rather than like a 3-day ordeal back and forth, send me a letter, yada yada yada. Like it's just focusing on like the user experience, I guess, which is something that a lot of people might not have brought into that collection until you guys kind of proved that it works. It was user experience is talked about in software, right? Like iPhones, like user experience. It's like that's what they built this almost $1 trillion company on. So I think focusing on that in collections is like where we're going with all of this at the end of the day, right? Is just increasing the user experience for the consumer to buy a product, which is, like you said, paying their bill is the product that they're trying to buy. So just letting them do that in an easy way, I guess, is kind of what I think about it.
Yeah, and I think you triggered a really good thought, which was maybe the software platform you had before, or the dialer problem that you had before, doesn't necessarily fit your needs anymore. And it's really coming back on, taking a look at your guys' offering as an example, and how your solution is better. So if you're thinking about running into email, you can. It's a whole stream. If you think about running into text messaging, you can. It's got its TCPA exposure and all that other stuff. But maybe start with what you currently do, and make sure you're doing it the best, right? Make sure that you've got, really good agents with really good training, consumer focused. You've got the best dialer software out there. And it's meeting not what your organization was 10 years ago, but what it is today, when you first bought the software, and really focus on that first. And then when you're doing that stuff well, and that's good and it's solid, then start to say, okay, we can continue to look at, payment portals, emails, and text messaging, and all that other stuff, and figure out how we want to layer it on. But I think it's a great place for people to start, because you focus on what make sure you're doing it very, very well. So.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think it's good. I'm hoping that, more agencies, I don't know if you guys are hoping this, but I'm hoping a lot more agencies follow in your footsteps and, do what you guys are doing. Because I think it's just going to, one of the, collections has a bad rap, unfortunately. And, for some rightful reasons. And so I'm hoping a lot more agencies kind of take this route that you guys are doing, and you have more competition in the future.
Right. Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you for wishing on me. I love that.
Sorry.
No, it's quite all right. Michael, did you have any thoughts to that question? I guess I want to make sure I get it all and capture it all for my future competitors.
Much appreciated. I got plenty of thoughts for you, but I'll keep it short. So just going off what Alex said, I think you got to keep in mind that every consumer is different, and you got to, in dealing with a debt, it's uncomfortable, it's embarrassing, but it happens. I mean, everyone goes through it. So finding out the solution for the consumer that best makes them feel comfortable to pay it off is going to be a win-win for both sides, I think. So whether that's them, wanting to use email, whether it's someone to do it through text, whether it's someone to go online, whether it's people that want to go through a phone call, everybody's different. There's not one simple thing. And also, I know you mentioned the trace stack. So with phone calls and the numbers coming up as spam likely, like my doctor called me last week and it came up as spam likely. I didn't know it until I got the voicemail. So it's constantly happening. But there is solutions that you can put in place right now that will help you get a bigger inside look at the numbers you're using. There's certain practices that you can go about that will actually help you, identify which numbers are at risk or which numbers are coming up, labeling incorrectly. And there's also ways and practices that you can do to avoid this from the get-go. So if you have any questions, you know who to call. So shameless pitch there. But also with COVID too, one of the things that I think a lot of agencies were scared about in the beginning, they shut down, they closed up shop, they didn't want to, ruffle any feathers, but the people that stayed open, people that we've talked to, they've had some of their best months on record, because people are actually, they have money to spend now. They're actually at home. So they're more open to these conversations and whatnot. So it's actually been very, very good for these agencies that have called, email, texted. They've made some good jumps in revenue.
Wow, that's a great point. And I think Michael, your argument on expertise, right? As we continue to see, increased compliance, complexity in systems and all that stuff, that's really where you're going to have to tap into that expertise. And we all can't be an expert on a wide range of subjects. So coming to those folks like yourself, getting those questions answered, is very, very helpful. So it's cool that you guys are solving for those problems. So
yeah, and thanks so much, Tim. I really appreciate you joining us. Of course, as always, this was great. Hope this episode was helpful for everybody watching. Again, Tim Collins with TrueAccord. I appreciate you as always for your inputs on obviously an area that you guys kill it in. So keep doing that. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.